Let me bring up Blackboard. All right, so Blackboard, it greets you with a list of your courses. You'll see my class on here, 2019-20 Margraph Geometry Honors. And when you go to my Blackboard site, it greets you with the announcements. So on the announcements page here is just a welcome about materials to bring to class. And then now after today, you can actually go ahead and fill out these two forms here. So the textbook checkout form is just simply a Google form for you to fill out the, okay, so you have to log in. Make sure you type in the correct password and don't have on your caps lock. That's helpful. Okay, so just list what period you're in, your first and last name, and this is where you'll put your textbook number, okay? So it's just an easier way for me to collect all that information because at the end of the year, you'll turn back in your textbook and have to check off on it. Okay? And then you'll also fill out the student information form. I used to have people fill it out on paper, but since we all get laptops tomorrow, woohoo! Then you'll have a laptop unit there. You can just do it on your phone too, but you guys get laptops tomorrow during TA. So between now and next class, just make sure you fill out these two forms. All right, so on our Blackboard page here, really the most important tab off to the side is course materials. That's where everything is. So under course materials, you'll see it unit by unit. I think we have 11 units, that's what I was thinking there, 11 and a half-ish. So our very first unit that we're starting today is Unit 1, Basics of Geometry, and in here you'll find our assignment sheet. You'll see day by day what we do. It has the notes and then also the homework posted, okay? So the key to the notes are posted and then a blank copy of the homework. Should you lose yours or forget yours, you can always go on there. And you can either print it out or you don't have to print out. Just do the problems on notebook paper like you would if it would have been out of a textbook. And then another key thing with this is that the review key is always going to be posted on Blackboard, like with the full work and answers for you to check your answers with. So that'll be on Blackboard. So anytime you lose materials or need to access materials, you can find it there. Now here's the other just basic stuff, nice contact information. Under assignments is where I'll just repost the assignment sheet, but it's, again, it's underneath course materials anyway. Class syllabus, we're waiting for that to get approved. Once it's approved, then I'll throw that up there. Web links, just some things like Khan Academy. There's MathSpace and our YouTube channel. And then textbooks, just talk about the textbook you got there. So the other kind of two important things is videos of lessons. So I have on my YouTube channel, Margraph Math, woohoo, look at that, 36 subscribers, 36 people that felt like they wanted to watch a full year of Geometry Honors. So here's just recordings of the lessons in class. So let's suppose you missed a date. You can go and see what we did in class, or maybe you just didn't catch part of the notes, or you need to go back and hear that refresher. It's literally just a recording of what we're doing in class. So there's that for you. And I'm trying to update it where whatever unit we're currently on is what it greets you with. But if you need to find a different unit, you just go to playlists. And if you really want to learn calculus, it's also up there. But you just go to the playlist for Geometry Honors that you're looking for, whatever unit may be. All right, and then MathSpace probably did a little bit with this last year. We'll do some more with it as well, but that's just a link for it. So again, key things on Blackboard is simply course materials and videos of lessons. Any questions with our Blackboard setup? Okay. So again, make sure that before next class, you go ahead and fill out those two forms here. Okay. So we have textbooks. At this point, we should hopefully get done with your note card. I'm sorry I took away the instructions. Let me bring that back up for you. If you have finished your note card, go and just pass it forward. If you're still working on it, that's fine. I'll collect in just a moment. Just pass it forward to the room. Perfect. Okay, and if you're still working, that's fine. I'll come grab them again. Okay, so just a little bit about myself. Okay, I've reoriented this board already 3 times this morning. We're gonna go for a 4th time and see if it works. But there with the smart board, it wasn't ready for summer to be able to be there. It's limited today. 2 years ago, the smart board gave me all kinds of troubles. Last year it behaved, and this year it's not off to fix smart boards. Okay, so a little bit about myself. My name is Mrs. Margraf. I am a teacher here. 3 things about myself. I'm originally from Ohio. In my opinion, it's the best state ever. Many people don't agree with me, but that's where my family is. I'm actually from like a farmland area. More cows than what you have here, and a lot less traffic. But I moved down here, I think it was like 7 years ago. I enjoy running. I actually ran both cross country and track in high school and college. Lots of fun, just ran for fun now. And my favorite color is green. Some extracurriculars that I'm involved in. I'm one of the sponsors for Math Honor Society, and that's something that you can do once you've completed Algebra 2, so look forward to that in the future. I'm one of the JV Math Team sponsors, and what JV Math Team is really just a chance to do some challenging problems. So approximately once a month, the county puts out some challenge problems. We meet for half an hour, you sit there and individually try to do those 6 problems, and then we check your answers to see how you did. So it's really just doing some fun challenging problems. And then this year I'm hoping to help out with FCA, which is Fellowship in Christian Ethics. My favorite candy is Reese's Fast Break, and my birthday was actually yesterday, but I'm not going to tell you the year. Okay, so let's talk about some things in the classroom, just kind of general setup. So on a typical day when you come in, there's probably going to be either a warm-up or you're just going to go and start checking your homework. So when you come in, there might be some papers for you to pick up over here. Typically it's sitting on top of the bookshelf. Ideally by the end of the day, the bookshelf will be cleared off so I can put those there. So just check to see if you have to pick up any papers, then go to your desk. And when you're at your desk, go ahead and get out your assignment sheet in your homework. So your assignment sheet at the start of each unit, you get an assignment sheet that gives you the tentative pacing for the unit, tells you what we're learning, what your homework is. This is where I record your homework scores, so don't lose that. So just have that out with your homework so I can go and start coming around and check and give you points for your homework. If it's a warm-up, start working on the warm-up, but still have your homework out so we can go effectively. Some things around the classroom. Over here on the sideboard, ideally each day I will have our agenda for what we're doing. And there's my after-school time slots. It changes from week to week because we have meetings some days. And then in the event that you are absent, and this lovely bit over here, is where I put all of our extra copies. So just look for it says geometry honors, not calculus. You don't know that yet, and I'm not teaching it this year, so you'll change that. And apparently, I left the assignment sheets from last year, so if you want assignment sheets for ellipses, I think you're using it. So anyway, you come over here, go to the day that you missed, and just pull out one of each of the items in there. We've got hole punch, pencil sharpener, there's a thin sharpener on the wall as well. They both work. Some days one works better than the other. If you forget a pencil, got these little beautiful little golf pencils here. No eraser those, so it's probably in your best interest to try to find one from a buddy first. But if you are, just ask you for that. Should you not have your notebook paper, I've got some extra notebook paper, graph paper, computer paper. And when we get to it, we've got rulers, cutting pencils, whatnot. This is kind of your materials as needed. And like I said, we will pick up those papers here. And then typically when we have an assessment, once this part gets cleared off, then I can move my papers onto this part. Over here is where you usually will turn in your assessments. So just turn it upside down into the proper form, whichever form you have. So let's talk about on test day. On test day, I give you the entire class free to take the test. So when you come in, you'll turn in your assignment sheet and your review packet, because that's the last thing they check homework for. And so I check your homework on there and then total up your homework points from your assignment sheet. So you turn that in, sit at your desk, get ready to go. Once that bell rings, we start right away, because I want to give you the full 90 minutes, maybe 7 minutes, however many minutes it is, to work on that test. And then again, once you're done, you turn to the tray and just start working on it. So it's kind of the basic setup of our classroom. let's go ahead and take a look at some of the nitty-gritty about what you need for this class and what it takes to be successful in this class. Pass this out. And you can go ahead and get out your summer assignments at this point. Make sure your name is on it, and I'll pass you the stapler if you need a staple your work with. Not with that little half sheet of paper. Just take it all together. I found one of the hardest things as a teacher is to count the proper number of papers. Not because I can't count, but because the papers stick to me. Okay, so honors geometry. Geometry comes after Algebra 1 because everything you learned in Algebra 1 is used in geometry. So that's why you had that summer assignment, is to refresh your memory of all the goodness that you learned last year. You saw it was something as simple as finding slope to write an equation of a line. We had some radicals in there. We deal with radicals a lot with our first unit today of distance formula, but then again when we get to our right triangles unit. You probably had to deal with some exponents there. Again, we had exponents we had to deal with a lot of times with our triangles. And then we even got to the point of our factoring. Factoring we have a lot in geometry honors. Every single unit, you'll probably have it in class, on homework, on a quiz, on a test. Factoring doesn't go away. So that summer assignment was to help you practice those Algebra 1 skills that are necessary to be successful in honors geometry. So the first thing to be successful in honors geometry is that you know your algebra. If you don't know your algebra, you're going to struggle with geometry. So the teacher recommendation guidelines for being in honors geometry was that you had a B- or higher in Algebra 1 honors and got 4.60 or higher in your Algebra 1 SOL. Now I know the Algebra 1 SOL was a little different last year where they brought in that Desmos and whatnot. So it's kind of more heavily on your class grade. Now, if at any point in time during this class you feel like, oh, I bit off more than I can chew, or I thought I did this try, but I'm struggling with it, come talk to me and we can talk about moving to Geometry Regular. Sometimes people just struggle with geometry because it's a different branch than algebra, right? So there's algebra, it's kind of that logical thinking. There's geometry, which there's actually a unit called logic in it, but there's a lot of the kind of spatial awareness. And so some people struggle with geometry just simply because it's a different branch of mathematics. So don't feel defeated if you struggle with geometry. Maybe this is a class you need to tone it down a bit, that's fine. The important thing is that we find what is the right placement for you to be successful this year. I don't want you to go through the year and then halfway through decide this was too much and now I've got a couple bad grades that are going to fall into geometry regular. So talk to me right away. Don't be ashamed by it. For me personally in high school, history. History was the class that I struggled with the most. That was the class that I did not want to go advanced with or AP with. No way, no his, no way, no thank you. So if geometry is going great for you, awesome. Dig in deep, go for it. If you're struggling with it, even after coming to get help, and you're still struggling with the topics, come talk to me. We can talk to your counselor about getting you placed in our class. I would love for you all to stay in my class, but I also don't want you to sit here and silently suffer, okay? So if you struggle, if you feel like it's too much, just talk to me and we'll get you in the right class, okay? Now, things to be mindful of to be successful in geometry. And these are really just to be successful across the board in all your classes. First thing is to come to class. Pretty important. Obviously, when you miss class, you miss material. But as you know with math, math builds upon itself. So when you miss day 1, come back to day 2. Day 2 is talking about day 1, but you didn't even learn day 1. It's really important that you come when you're able to. Obviously, there are going to be situations in which you can't come, and that's understandable. But do your best to try to understand the material. Like go on Blackboard, get the material, look at the notes. A lot of it you can probably figure out on your own. Come to me for help right away because we want to make sure we take care of any issues you have so that it doesn't compound. Be prepared. Bring everything to class that you need, really. The basics, paper, pencil, your brain. And super important for your homework. When you get your homework, I recommend you do it that night, just so that way if you end up having questions on it, you still have that next day to come in and ask me the simple questions you have. And that doesn't mean you have to stay after school for half an hour. If it's just a quick 5-minute question, you can pop on in the morning and say, hey, Ms. Murray, I got stuck here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I can help you out and be on your way. So it's really important that you do your homework and do it thoroughly. So our next bullet point here is check your homework. Like I said, when you come into the classroom, I'll have the answer key posted and you'll check your answers with it. Now, I post the answer key with the work. So I want you to go through, check to see which problems you got right, which ones you got wrong. And on the ones that you got wrong, go back and look at the work. Did you just simply say that 2 plus 4 was 8 rather than 6? Or was that you completely did a set of wrong altogether? Take a look back at the work and see if you can figure out your mistakes from there. And then anything you still can't figure out, then those are the questions that we ask in class. And that helps us to also to maximize our time when we go over when we go over homework questions. So we're not spending 5 minutes on a problem just to find out you added wrong. Okay, so look back at the work. And my recommendation is that when you miss problems, not just look at the mistake, but redo it to do it correctly. Because we don't want you to make the same mistakes on the same test. Homework will be checked multiple ways, both completion and accuracy, just depends on the assignment. When it is checked for completion, you just actually attempt the problems. If you just put a question mark, you didn't actually try the problem, you need to actually try in order to get credit for it. Especially when we get to proofs, actually write the given statement. If it's talking about triangles, put down something you know about triangles, side, side, side there. So make sure you truly try it. Full effort is expected to be on every question and work must be shown in order to get full credit for it. All right, and then lastly is just to be an active student. When you're sitting there and we're learning new material, think about it. Don't just sit there and passively listen while you copy down the notes and leave saying, well, I don't know what we learned. Think about what it is that we're learning. When I ask you to talk to your shoulder partner, those around you, actually engage with them, ask me questions. I don't want you to go through the whole class not understanding something. Raise your hand, ask your question. If you have input, share your ideas. Be an active participant. Okay, so before we talk about makeup work, let's talk about what those supplies are that you need. So we don't use calculators in here until we get to sine of 17 degrees, and that comes in about February time. So you will eventually need a graphing calculator. TI 83 or 84 is preferred. You won't use it a lot in my class, but you will need it next year in Algebra 2. And then if you decide to take pre-calc, and then if you decide to take calculus, you'll need it in ProfStat or APStat if you take those instead. So you do need it pretty much for every year of math after this. You'll use it on a more regular basis there. You'll be doing more complicated things with your calculator. So if you want to make the investment this year to purchase it and use it for the rest of the years, you're fine. If you want to just borrow one from a sibling or a friend for the time frame that we're using it, that's fine as well. I don't really care, it's up to you. Just know that you'll need it eventually later this year, and then you'll need it for each year after that. All right, and then in terms of organizing your materials, that's up to you. You're in high school now. I'm not going to be doing notebook checks, binder checks. If you prefer to have one notebook for all of your classes with those 5 subject notebooks, that's fine. But if you want to have a different folder for each class, do whatever works for you. You'll be getting quite a few papers from me, so my recommendation is that you have a small 3-ring binder, like maybe a 1-inch or even just a 1/2 inch. And that's where you put the current unit. So right now we're in Unit 1, you put all your Unit 1 stuff in there. But when we're on Unit 10, I don't need you to bring Unit 1 day 1 homework to class. You know how to do distance homework happening. So what I would recommend is you keep just the current unit in that notebook that you bring to school, whether it's a notebook or a binder. And then at home, have a bigger binder that you put the previous units so that you can refer back to it, especially as we get to SOL and final exam time. You can refer back to your Unit 3 material. But when you're Unit 8, I don't need you to have your Unit 3 material. Okay. You might want to pull out like the page on theories and cautions, but otherwise you can leave that previous stuff at home and just have the current stuff because your backpack's already stuffed as it is. All right, and then again, just general have notebook paper, pencils. We'll use colored pencils or highlighters as we're doing notes. You'll see me change colors. That's what that's for. And occasionally we'll need graph paper. Are there any questions? Oh, and our classroom contribution. So I ask that each person brings in either 2 thin expo markers, because we do a lot of whiteboard practice in here, or a box of tissues. Right now we have 1.5 boxes of tissues, and that's what I had left over from last year. It's not going to get us through the whole year this year. So either one of those things, if you bring that in for classroom contribution, I would greatly appreciate it. All right, questions on supplies, how things go with that. Okay, so let's talk about makeup work. In the event that you are absent, not able to make it in, if it's just a regular notes day, everything's posted on Blackboard. You can go on Blackboard, you can access the notes link and the key from there, so you can copy down the notes from there. Again, the YouTube video's up there. I have the recordings from last year, so you can go on right now if you want to learn Unit 8 Day 1 and watch it. So you can watch the recording. Now, it's literally just a recording of what I'm saying in class, so feel free to fast forward when I tell you guys to work on something that's quiet for 5 minutes. You don't need to sit there and listen for all that. You can fast forward, put on 2 times the speed, whatever. I'm not going to be offended by that. But go on Blackboard, try to figure out the notes. It's really up there so that it's basically what you would have had in class, so you're not going to miss as much. Attend to the homework at least, and then be ready to ask questions the next time you come back. If you miss a review day, we don't learn anything new on the review day. And on Blackboard, the answer key to the review packet is posted as well as a blank copy. So you'll still be expected to take the test on the test day. Okay? Nothing new is learned, and we're just reviewing. Everything that we did is up on Blackboard. So you'll still be expected when you come in, you'll turn in a review packet and the homework they were absent from the day before and take the test. Now, if you're absent on a quiz or a test day, Kathleen, if you could pick up your head, please. Thank you. All right, if you're absent on a quiz or a test day, you'll be expected to take that the next time I see you in class. You don't get extra time because you're absent. So let's suppose that we had a quiz today and you were absent, then on Wednesday when I see you, you'll just make that up. And you'll make it up during class. You'll still be responsible for the notes that we were taking during class. So again, you just go on Blackboard and get it from a friend. And then same thing with the test. If you miss a test day, next class I see you, I'll start you off with your test, your whole class period, but again, you're responsible for what you missed there. Okay, do we have any questions with that? Awesome. We already talked about phones, and then just other things is just the common, basic, common courtesy things. Raise your hand and wait to be called on. My favorite was last year. For some reason, they all seem to go, I have a question, I have a question, I have a question. Say, yeah, that's why you raised your hand. So you don't need to tell me you have a question, just raise your hand. I know what that means. And then wait to be called on. Yes. What did you say? There are retakes on most major tests, and we'll talk about that once we get close to the first test. But really, we shouldn't be relying on the retakes. You don't want to be retaking all of high school, right? And also, too, if we're struggling, we want to take care of that beforehand. I will tell you guys up front that our retakes in here, they are never easier than the original test, as they shouldn't be, because then why would you try on the first test? And so they're done in half the amount of time, and it's half the length. So it's a completely different test. So our classes are 90 minutes, so the retake is a different test, half the length, and then done in 45 minutes. Okay, and then other common things is just when someone's talking, be respectful, listen. That's pretty much it. I mean, just be the normal good students that you know to be. All right, let's talk about honor code real quick. I didn't think we had to have this discussion as in-depth in high school, but apparently we do. So Herndon High School Honor Code says students attending Herndon High School are expected to conduct themselves honorably in pursuit of their education. Cheating, plagiarism, and fraud violate ethical and moral rules of conduct and will not be tolerated in high school. So they have this lovely flow chart of what happens when you violate the honor code. Let's talk about what that violation of honor code looks like. Now there's the obvious ones like plagiarizing, turning work that's not yours, taking someone's homework, putting your name on it, turning that in. That's a violation of honor code. That is dishonest. Now, some of the not so obvious things is that telling someone about a test that you've taken but haven't taken yet. That's a violation of the honor code. If you've taken the test first, let's see, what is this, third period? And you go out to lunch and tell your buddies about what's on the test. And say, hey, make sure you know how to do this problem. And there's this problem like this, make sure you do that. That's a violation of honor code because you're giving them an unfair advantage than other students where they didn't have that information. Some things that I dealt with last year, I had students get in trouble for talking to others about the test when they had already taken it. Students that would look off their partner's work and copy that down, clearly a violation of the honor code. When you turn in your quiz or test and look at someone's answers, that's a violation of that code. When you go and then change your answers, clearly a violation of that code, right? What was the other thing? Taking a Scantron after it's been graded, changing your answers and turning it back and saying it read it wrong. That's lying. That's a violation of the honor code. Unfortunately, these are all things that I dealt with last year with my students. Not okay. Violations of honor code are taken very seriously. And the consequence is that the first violation here, you will receive a penalty on your assignment. I will contact your administrator on it. It will go on your student discipline record. And then anything that you're involved in, clubs, sports, they'll be notified of it as well. On your next one, there start to be penalties in terms of removal of or bench for sports, then eventually removal and things like that. I don't want you to travel down that road. I would much rather you get your grade honestly, and thus you would act that way for the rest of your life, right? We should not be going about our lives doing things dishonestly, and that includes in school as well, okay? So I take it very seriously. Please do not violate the honor code. Just do your own work, really. Get your grade by yourself, not with someone else. Okay, questions with any of this? Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead, let's see. Give out the half sheet. Let's collect summer assignments. I didn't pass around the staple. Okay, so just make sure your name is on your summer assignment. If you would, also put your period number. I don't know who's in what period right now. I'm still working at that. And then I'll pass around a stapler. If you don't already have your word stapled to it, then just staple it and continue to pass around. Once you've stapled it, make sure your name's on it. Don't pass it. And I'll collect it from the front. I'll go a couple times in case I missed anyone. While that's happening, let's go ahead and talk about Remind real quick. So you can go and get your phones out for this. Raise your hand if the teacher has used Remind with you before. Wonderful. Okay, so for those that have, what Remind is basically a website service where I am able to create an account that allows me to send out messages to you. I am not sitting there on my cell phone texting you, so don't respond because I won't be responding. It goes to my email. So you can either sign up going to this website, or you can go ahead and text. So this is third grade, so it's third geometry honors. So this number here. What I use Remind for, I don't use it often, like every day. It's just say homework changes, and I make that announcement in class. I might just follow it up with the Remind text just to remind you of that. At the end of the year, when it's time to bring back your textbooks, I'll send a Remind text about that. Any Remind text that I send, I will also put on Blackboard. So if you don't sign up for Remind, that's fine, it'll be on Blackboard as well. It's just usually students are more likely to get the Remind notification than to go on Blackboard and check the announcements. So you don't have to sign up for it. You are welcome to do so. And if you don't have a cell phone, you can actually sign up for email notifications as well. So it doesn't have to be phone notifications, phone notifications. And again, it's me sending out a message through the website. I'm not texting you, so you won't be texting back. You can always email, but that will go to my email. So leave it there for a moment. Stay for some around, let me pass up next.
Is that your code to join class?
Yes, yep. So this is specifically third period geometry honors. Are there any other blue note cards that they grab? Now you have to bear with me. They slightly changed the schedule this year. So you're going to have to help me remember that we end at 11:12 instead of 11:13. Okay, 11:12. Got it. Purple sheets are coming around. Let's get to knock it up purple sheet. Okay. While I'm thinking about the schedule, just to kind of clear up things for tomorrow, because I feel like it's confusing what we do here in high school. So tomorrow's simple fact day, which means we have our even periods. So you'll have second period, and then fourth period block is what is our TA or stinger time. So tomorrow it's TA and stinger time. So for the first half, you'll go to TA. That's on your red schedule. And then the second half, it's stinger 1, which means you go to your first period class. So you thought you couldn't get enough of the first period today, or going to get a same thing tomorrow. And then you go 6th period, 8th period. Then on the next block day, Thursday, will be second period, and then the fourth period block will be TA stinger 2. So you'll go to your TA, and then you'll go to your second period class, and then again 6th period. For the first, I think like month of school, month and a half of school, they do that where it's TA stinger 1, TA stinger 2, TA stinger 3, so on and so forth. After that, then you'll go TA stinger 1, and then the next time will be stinger 2, stinger 3. The next time, stinger, we don't have 4 because that's not a class, it's just a block. So 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. It's kind of confusing after the first month or so. Hopefully it makes more sense. But that's what that is. So tomorrow you'll go to, after second period, you'll go to TA. Hopefully you're safe. Okay. Is there anyone else that needs a stapler? So then pass forward your summer assignments. More things to do. There's all comes and out of the summer assignments. So coming to you, you should have a purple sheet, and then the staple paper is coming to you, and I'll collect the summer assignments from the front. At this point, you don't need your textbook. You want to throw in your backpack. That's fine. You don't need phones anymore, so you can put those away. We don't need the word schedule, so you can put those away as well. We'll just take a look at our purple sheet and that stapled one you just got. Yes. You need one? Oh, perfect. Okay. Is there anyone that did not get that stapled packet? Awesome. So what this is just reviewing some more specific topics from your summer assignment, so from Algebra 1. And then we're going to go more in depth with our midpoint formula and distance formula. These two formulas you may or may not have seen before, but as you can see with our midpoint formula, we're just adding two numbers and dividing by 2. So still just doing algebra, but here's the formula for it. And our distance formula, we're going to subtract squared, add that together and take the square root. So still just algebra 1 material, it's just with two formulas that are geometry formulas. I mean, they're also algebra formulas, but we use them more in geometry. So these are just hitting some of the highlights from that summer assignment that we'll be doing heavily in geometry honors. So we're just going to kind of, I'm going to pick and choose some problems from here just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page with that. So before we head into this, let's take a look at that purple sheet, your assignment sheet. So your assignment sheet here, again, this is where I will give you the outline of approximately our pacing for that unit. It might change kind of how things go. And I have geometry honors on both red days and black days, so that's why there's 2 days listed for each one. You'll see it gives the topic that we're learning, so today is just our lesson 1, and then your homework tonight's going to be lesson 1. So what that packet is there is we're actually going to use for both homework and notes. It's your homework, but we're going to go do something in class, and then they're going to off your homework. Also, just remember go on Blackboard and do those 2 forms on your textbook, checkout form, and so this is kind of the basic general layout of how most of our units in geometry go. They're all about this length, where we go lesson, quiz, then usually a lesson, quiz, or lesson, quiz, review test. So right around was this like 7 to 8 days there. And unit 1's a shorter unit, so we actually threw in a little bit more review. You'll see we have a review day, a quiz and review day, and then we put in another day where a little more review, and we'll go ahead and start the next unit just so we save on time. We'll do our test. So let's talk about quizzes and tests. So quizzes, you'll be getting a certain time frame. Usually quizzes are about 30 minutes, but I'll let you know how long you have. It's expected that you complete it within that time frame. So it's important that you know the math well enough to be able to produce it in that time frame. If it takes you an entire day to factor 3 problems, if you don't know it well enough to do it in those 30 minutes, that's something you've got to work out. So I'll let you know the time frame. I'll even move the clock so you can see the ending time for that quiz. But just know that needs to be completed that time. Now, if you have extended time from like a 5 for IEP, I'll talk to you individually about that. But if you don't, then it'll be expected you turn it in at that time frame. So just make sure you're working diligently and efficiently. If you're stuck on a problem, move on and come back to it. Don't spend your entire time on problem 1 and then have a blank list to turn in. On tests, you get the entire class time. So again, you come in, turn your stuff, and then I give you the entire class time. Once again, it's expected that you complete it within those 87 minutes, 90 minutes per year there. And so when that bell rings, you gotta turn it in, and then you're done. So just make sure that you know the material well enough to complete it within that time frame. When you get to later classes, like AP Calculus and AP Stat, the actual AP exam has very specific time frame questions. Like for their multiple choice, they get 2 to 3 minutes per question. So we're trying to get you geared towards those higher level math classes. One thing is, do you know it well enough to do it in a time frame? Okay. So again, you'll see some of our homework sometimes in the textbook, sometimes not. So just make sure you check here. And then at the bottom here, just again talking about some of the key things. Late homework, I'll accept 2 days late for late credit. And I will be checking homework every day. But since there's just 1 homework grade for the unit, so I'll check your homework, put your score on your assignment sheet. Then at the end, I collect that, total up, and that's what it says. And then, let's see, review key is on Blackboard. Make sure you check it and ask me questions before the test day. When we come in test day, you start the test. It's not time to ask me questions. At that point, we're starting the test. Test day is for testing. So make sure you ask me questions on review day. You send me after school, before school, or during Stinger for questions. And then, again, just reminders, if you're asked on review day, you'll still take the test as scheduled. If you miss a test or quiz, you'll take the next class. Questions with this? Okay, so finally, let's do some math with our lesson. Okay, so these top formulas here are formulas you should already have memorized. Our slope equation, and then our 3 equations for a line. And then, again, our midpoint formula and distance formula you might not have memorized or might not have seen before. These are two geometry formulas that you just use algebra with it. You do need to memorize these distance and midpoint formulas for that first quiz. So make sure you start working on memorizing those. All right, so our equations of a line. Now, everyone's favorite is the slope-intercept form, right? Y equals mx plus b. We all love that one. Probably a more convenient one is actually the point-slope form. Sometimes it gets you to your answer a little faster. If the problem doesn't specify which one to use, you can use whichever one you want. Sometimes it'll tell you what to start with. Sometimes it'll tell you what to finish in. So just make sure you read and follow directions. That's the number one mistake people make in geometry is not following directions. So just make sure you go back, reread the question, and make sure you've actually answered it. Our standard form isn't used as often. The standard form is nice because you can quickly get your x and y intercepts from there and graph your line. But there are two kind of restrictions with the formatting for standard form. Who remembers what one of those restrictions is about the formatting? Genesis?
There can't be a negative x.
Yeah, very good. So our A value is the coefficient for x. A can't be negative, so I'm just going to say A must be positive. And that's only for our leading coefficient there. Very good. So there's one other restriction.
None of the coefficients can be a fraction.
Good. So we can't have fractions, and we're going to go and say as well, no decimals. So we're going to say no fractions or decimals. Awesome. So these are the two formatting things for standard form. We have our x term, and then our y term equals our constant. And then just make sure no fractions or decimals. So if you have fractions, just multiply that by that denominator, get rid of it. If you have decimals, multiply by 10 or 100, whatever you need to get rid of that. And then our leading term, that coefficient must be positive. Very good. So you'll find in Geometry Honors, which I think you had this last year with Algebra Honors, but we're not always doing with nice whole numbers, right? We are going to have fractions. Did anyone have Mrs. Himmelberger last year? Fractions are your friends. I think she's one that says that. Yes, no, maybe so? All right. She used to say it at least. So we will have fractions. We will have radicals. We have to simplify radicals. If your answer is square root of 13, I don't expect you to mentally approximate that and write out the decimal. I want the exact value. The exact value is square root of 13. The approximation of 3.7-ish is an approximation of the exact value. So I want the actual exact value. Same with fractions. If your answer is 1/3, I want the answer of 1/3 or 0.3 with the line over top indicating repeat. If you put just 0.3, that's 3/10, which is not the same as 1/3. That would actually be wrong. Okay, so I want the actual answer. Just leave it in fraction form. Simplify it, but leave it in fraction form. Same with the radicals. But know that if you get 7/13, that's okay. That can be an answer. Okay, so let's just go ahead and talk about our midpoint and distance formula. So our midpoint formula, what this is we're given two ordered pairs on a graph. Okay, I'm just making it up. Say one's up there and one's up there. The midpoint formula, you take your ordered pairs, put it into your formula here, and it spits out an ordered pair. So this is your x equation, right? This is the x equation. This is your y equation, so you have an x, y. And whatever it gives you, that is the halfway point between those. So that's what the midpoint formula is doing. Our distance formula is measuring the distance between these points. Now, we're not taking out a ruler and measuring it because we're talking about it on a graph, so it's going to be like 13 units because a graph could be zoomed in or something like that. But it is, if I were to calculate the distance from here to here, what is that length? And so this actually stems from the Pythagorean theorem from triangles, and hopefully during a signature soon I can derive that for you. So you want to commit both of these to memory. My calculus kids last year actually told me about the sleepy owl was the way they helped remember the distance formula. I hadn't heard of that before, so I'll share that with you. A lot of times students forget whether it's plus or minus. So they said the sleepy owl, these are like the eyes closed, and this is like the beak. So that helped them to remember it was subtract squared plus subtract squared. You can use it if you want. You don't have to though. But make sure you don't forget your squareds and don't forget your squared. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at one of our, I've got notes for myself, which one I want to do. Let's go ahead and take a look at, I think it's number, let's go to number 8. So these problems are pretty basic. You ran the equation line, you did a million of those last year. Notice here it specifies we want it in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. It doesn't tell you what you have to start it, so it's up to you. You can go and throw this information in for x, y, and slope, and then solve for b, or you can put it in point slope form and then go from there. I personally prefer point slope form. Sometimes it gets you there faster, sometimes not. When you get to calculus, you're going to want to use point slope form all the time. So we've got, let's see, this is our x value, our y value, this is our slope. So our point slope form, y minus y equals our slope times x equals x. Now, we're going for slope-intercept form. It's okay to have fractions in that, but maybe you don't like to work with fractions. I like to avoid them if I don't have to, because it's easier to work with numbers, like whole numbers, rather than fractions. So I personally, you could distribute this out, but you're going to have fractions anyway, so I personally would go ahead to get rid of that fraction. I would multiply both sides by 4. Again, there's multiple ways that you can go about this. I'm just kind of showing you some tricks of the trade that might make it a little bit easier for you. So here I'd have 4y minus 8, and then I'm multiplying by 4 times the negative 3/4, and that's going to cancel out my denominator, which is the whole reason why I chose to multiply by 4, so I don't have to deal with that fraction anymore. So now I have negative 3x, and then positive 9. Some people don't like to do this because they get confused about, well, am I distributing the 4 to everything here, including in the parentheses? Remember, this is multiplication, so it's commuted property. We can just move our 4 in front and you multiply those together, simplify, and then multiply. So it's totally up to you. Some people prefer to distribute first and then multiply by 4 to get rid of it. Some people like to keep the fractions and get that common denominator. Totally up to you. But now at this point, I don't have to deal with fractions until the end. So I have negative 3x, I'm going to add 8 to both sides. And now I can divide by 4, and I have y equals negative 3/4 x plus 17/4. That's in slope and slope. Questions with that? You'll notice we have fractions at the end, but I got to avoid working with them in the middle here. So some key things with geometry honors as well as high school math is that you want to make sure you're neat and organized with your work. When I'm grading your stuff, if it takes me more than 2 seconds to figure out what you're doing, then it's going to be wrong because you can't communicate information. So you need to know it, but you also need to communicate. So just write in a neat and orderly fashion. Notice I went like this. If you go left or right, that's fine, just draw arrows. But if you start hopping all around like this, I don't know what you're doing. It's also nice to put a box or a circle around the answer. It makes it easier for me to visually see it. Not a big deal if you don't, but it's just okay. Alright, so if we were to put this in standard form, we'd have to multiply by 4 to get rid of those fractions. We'd have to add our x over to make sure that's in front and make sure that it's positive. So just put it in this. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at 10 and 11. So most likely if you're at printed middle, you've heard the acronyms BUCS and WHITE. I had not heard of this until I came to teach art in high school. So for those of you that maybe have not heard of this, let's talk about it. BUCS can quite help you out with horizontal and vertical lines. Who remembers what BUCS stands for? Go ahead. Let's go.
B is vertical.
Good.
C is undefined.
Good. And X?
X equals something.
Good. So what this reminds us is that when we have a vertical line, it's going to be an undefined slope, right? Vertical line, our slope is undefined. We rise 10 but go over 0. 10 divided by 0 is undefined. And then it's going to be in the form x equals some number. So So let's say it was x equals 5. It's a vertical line. Good. How about point? First point. Good.
The O center is 0.
Good.
Y is y.
Good. So horizontal line is in the form y equals, again, it's a number. So let's say it's y equals 5. It's a horizontal line at 5, and our slope is 0. We've gone up 0 and over 10. 0 over 10 is just 0. So that's helpful for problems like 10 and 11. A horizontal line through point -2, 4. Well, horizontal is going to be a y equals. So what y value? So same thing for number 11 there, but that's just a reminder. That's how we would write those equations. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at our distance and midpoint formulas. So I want to make sure we go and do a couple in class. Again, it's just algebra within our formulas, but they're new formulas. So let's go to number 15. They tell us the endpoints. 3, 2, and 9, 10, and they want us to find the distance and the midpoint. Now, you don't need to sketch a graph of it. I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick sketch of it, just so you can visually see what we're doing. So we're at 3, 2, and 9, 10. Okay, something like that. So we're trying to find the distance between those 2 points, and we're trying to find what that midpoint is. Okay, so that's what we're aiming for. So let's go and start off with our distance formula. So again, our distance formula. So it's x1 minus x2, y1 minus y2. Because we are squaring, it doesn't matter which order you go in. You can do x2 minus x1. You get to pick which one's x1, x2. So it doesn't matter which order, just as long as you're consistent between them. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and call this my first set. Call this my second set. So it's x minus x, so 3 minus 9 quantity squared. And then y minus y, so 2 minus 10 quantity squared. That's where it goes over the whole thing. Again, that sleepy owl, right? Perhaps that's what you guys are feeling. And let's go and simplify from here. Notice that I'm labeling what I'm finding. D equals square root. Then for my next step, equals square root. Don't lose your square root. Write in those equal signs so I know that you're seeing these are equivalent expressions. All right, so we get -6 quantity squared, -8 quantity squared. So that's 36 plus 64, all underneath our square root. What does that give us? Square root of what? Anybody? 100, and we love that. That's a perfect square. Suppose that was not a perfect square, we'd have to go through and simplify our radicals. We get our distance is 10. Awesome. Now, we're in high school, we're in honors geometry. I don't expect you to write out every single little step. If you're one of those people that likes to, wants to, that's fine. I was one of those people in high school where I myself need to write out every single step to make sure I didn't miss anything. But if you're able to go here and as you're simplifying your head, you're like 3 minus 9, well that's -6 squared, which is 36. Then you can skip this step 300 to 36. 64. Maybe at this point you're like, oh, that's square root of 100, which is 10. That's fine. But make sure you do show at least your setup and some of the work in between. If you just spit out an answer, I can't give you credit because I don't know that you truly did it. So I want to know that you've done the work, not someone else. And then again, just make sure that you simplify our rules. Okay, our midpoint formula. Are there any questions on the distance formula? Our midpoint formula. Again, this is going to give me an xy value. We really have 2 equations in one. It's x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So it's an equation for our x, an equation for our y. So here we're just adding our x's. It's the average. So 3 plus 9 divided by 2. That's my x value. And then my y value, 2 plus 10 divided by 2. So we get 12 divided by 2. Oh, 6. So our midpoint is the 0.66. Which, if we think about it visually, that makes sense. If we would have gotten like -1, -8, that's not even in between the 2 points. That would be a concern. Again, You can probably simplify 12, grab it in your head. You don't need this middle step, but always show your setup. Questions on that? Pretty basic. Hardest part, memorizing those formulas. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at, let's go to number 20. Let's go to our radicals. Now, depending upon your teacher, you might have done like a little factor tree. You might have done, some people have like the upside down wedding cake or something. Some go this way, some people go vertically. All that matters is really what we're doing is we're breaking the number down into factors. So what numbers multiply to give us the 540? And we want to aim for perfect squares and primes. So 540, we know it's even. We can divide by 2. It's a pretty big number. That's going to be a long list of numbers if we start by 2. So I'm going to start off with, hey, it ends in 0. So this is the same thing as 54 times 10. That gets me, so I'm not going like super long down the page. I'm going to spread out. Now neither one is a perfect square nor a prime. So let's keep going. What can I break 54 down into?
9 and 6.
9 and 6. Very good. Hey, looky there. 9 is a perfect square. Woo-hoo. All right, 6 we can break down into 2 and 3. Those are primes. And then 10 we can break down into 2 and 3. Those are primes. Again, if you're one that does the like ladder, that's fine. Whatever method you've done to break down your factors before. Yes.
3 instead of 5.
Thank you. 2 and 5 is 10. Thank you. Thank you. I promise that didn't change over the summer. 3 times 5 is still 10. Okay, so now we're looking for those perfect squares to bring it outside of our radical, or if we have a group of 2. So I have my perfect square of 9. Square root of 9 is 3. That comes out. We got a group of 2's here, a pair of 2's, so that comes out. And then 3 and 5, they're lonely. They don't have a partner, and they're not perfect squares. They have to stay underneath the radical. Now, again, you don't need to write out 3 times 5. You can go and just put 15 there. I just want to give you all the steps here. So we have 6 root 15. So just a little refresher, because sometimes our distance formula yields a radical that needs to be simplified. Okay, questions with that? Awesome. So then with factoring, what is the very, very, very first thing we must do with factoring?
Probably more if you see term.
Oh, sure, that's good to know. What next then?
Make sure it equals 0.
Ooh, so I'm glad you said that. Here, the instructions specifically say to factor, which means we're giving an expression, we're not solving. So when we're solving, that's when it's going to equal 0 or equal some number. Factoring is when we're just aiming to put it in those set of parentheses. When we want it to have an equal sign, it'll say solve, and you'll see your expression equal to some number. When you see that equal sign, that solve, that means in the end we will have x equals 5 or x equals 2 things. But when it's factoring, we're just putting those parentheses, we're done. We're just simplifying the expression in terms of 2 factors, or 3 factors. I'm so glad you said it though. What else though? What's the first thing maybe I should say, what do we check for before we start?
Greatest common factor.
Greatest common factor, very good. Right. Okay, so we want to check for GCF. Does anyone have a GCF? No, it's not very exciting. Okay, so now we can move on. So we technically do a GCF 4 times within a factoring problem. So we first check for GCF, no GCF. All right, we move on. Now, because the leading coefficient here is 1, we can take the shortcut, which is awesome. But I want to show you what we have to do when there is something other than 1, and thus we can't take the shortcut. So it's still the same process. We need what multiplies to the outside and adds to the inside. Now, depending upon your teacher, you might have written it as a little T-chart. What multiplies to positive 6 and adds to negative 5. You might have written it as the X. I think you guys went with this, or maybe it's the other way around. It's the same thing, just a different way of displaying it. We're just trying to come up with 2 numbers that multiply to the outside and add to the inside. So what 2 numbers accomplish that? Negative 6 and 1, let's try that. Any other options? -3, -2. Any other options? So I love the combination that multiplies to 6 and adds to like -5 or -1 because it's always, which one is it? Is it the 6 and 1 or the 3 and 2? So many times we forget about the 6 and 1. So let's look and see. Multiplies to multiplies to positive 6. They both work for that. But what adds to -5? We're going to go with the -3, -2. Okay, so because our leading coefficient's 1, we have our answer. If we do the shortcut, immediately we know our answer is x minus 3, x minus 2. Woohoo, we're done. But if that wasn't a leading coefficient 1, or suppose you forgot that shortcut, hopefully not, because you just saved time, then we have to do the regrouping method. Which regrouping method is what you learned when you did factoring. Your teacher just might not have called it regrouping method, just called it factoring. So what we do is we take our middle term, that's -5x, and instead of -5x, we're going to write -3x, -2x. So we're just going to rewrite the expression. So I have x squared minus 3x minus 2x plus 6. Now, why am I allowed to do that? Why am I allowed to suddenly just remove the -5x and have a -3 and a -2?
Just because you're splitting it into two numbers.
Yeah. Would you guys agree that -3 minus 2 gives us -5? They're equivalent expressions. It's the same thing, just written a different way. That's like saying 1/2 equals 4/8. It's the same value, just written a different way. All right, so now we already checked for GCF once. We're going to check for GCF again and again. I look for GCF here. I can factor in x. I left behind x minus 3. I like to always put a plus sign. I've had students in years past forget that you're either adding subtract there, and they think it's multiplication, and they get it wrong. So then we're going to look for our GCF here. When there's a negative in front, you always take that negative out. So our GCF is -2, and I have x minus 3. If you've done your factoring right, our insides should match. If they don't match, go back and check your work. Okay, so then now our last GCF. Our first term here and our second term both have an x minus 3, so we factor that out. And left behind I have x plus -2, which is just minus 2. So again, when your leading coefficient's 1, take that shortcut, you're done. You can skip these middle steps. But when it's not 1, we have to do this, which is called regrouping. Regrouping is going to be the only method with the shortcut. The shortcut is regrouping, just a shortcut. It's the only method we use in geometry honors. I don't want to see sliding and dividing. That does not work in every situation, and a lot of times people do it wrong. And guessing and checking is not helpful when you get really large numbers or when you get to pre-calculate the sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, so factoring is here to stay all year. We'll be doing it all year long. And when you get to Algebra 2 next year, you need to do it even more. And there are certain problems in which this regrouping is the only way you can do it. So regrouping is the only thing that will work no matter what. So that's why we're going to really practice it this year to make sure you're ready for next year. Questions? Yes? So the shortcut method, there's really no work to show for that. You would just have your answer on that. It's when you get to something other than 1 that you would have to show your intermediate steps here. But yeah, for the shortcut method, you're done, right? So for that, you're correct. Other questions? So down here we've got substitution or elimination. You can use either method. It doesn't specify, so it's up to you what you want to use. We do have systems of equations pop back up into our quadrilaterals, or we could even have it with our triangles. So it's really important you still remember how to do your systems of equations. Remember, for substitution, you're just simply solving for one of your variables, and then, so we would have like y equals 7 minus 3x. And you take this and put it in for your y up here. Make sure you put parentheses around and distribute. You solve for your x, get that value, put it back in for y. If you choose to do elimination method, we just simply want for our coefficients to be the same value, but opposite signs. So for example, I would probably try to get my y's to be the same here. I have -3y, so I would probably multiply this whole thing by 3. My new equation would be 9x plus 3y equals 21. And then this is what I would be adding together to solve for your y value, or sorry, solve for your x value, plug it back into the y. So just Okay, I want us to go ahead and do a couple problems on the back side. I want to do another problem with that distance midpoint. Because it's a pretty simple, right? You just plug it in and solve, plug and simplify. But there's really just one type of problem where they can make it a little bit tricky for you with our midpoint. So on the back side, it should be blank. Why don't you go ahead and write out this information. So we have an endpoint at -6, -1. And we have the midpoint at -3. So in this situation, instead of giving us the two endpoints and asking for the midpoint, they swapped it out and gave us a midpoint. So we're going to find the other endpoint. Now we've got two equations to choose from, two formulas. We have our midpoint formula, and we have our distance formula. Now they've given us the midpoint, so we already have this here, but they've only given us one endpoint, so we only have one of these values. Now our distance formula, they've given us the endpoint and midpoint. We could find the distance of that, but the problem with using the distance formula is suppose this is my endpoint and midpoint. Let's say I find the distance is square root of 13. Awesome. I know I need to go another square root of 13, but we don't really have any way to figure out where exactly that lands. So the distance formula, although it seems like it might be a good way to solve for their endpoint, you're going to run into an issue where you don't have enough information to solve. So we actually want to use our midpoint formula. But what's different here is that they actually gave us our endpoint. So we have our midpoint. And that equals, well, I don't have both x1 and x2. I only have one of them. So I'm going to go and just put this in for x1. So I have -6. I don't know my other x value. And then I have -1, and I don't know my other y value. So I have my midpoint, but I just have one of the endpoints. Well, what we've got here is that we actually have two equations in here. My x equals the x equation. So I have -3 equals -6 plus x sub 2. Sweet. We could solve for our x value there, right? Multiply by 2, -6 equals -6 plus x sub 2. Add our 6 over and we get x sub 2, 0. And then we just repeat with our y. We really have two equations in one here. Here's my y value, here's my y equation. 1 equals -1 plus y sub 2 over 2. So 1 equals -1 plus y sub 2 over 2. And then, here we solve for y. Multiply by 2, add my 1, and now I've got my x value and my y value. Now because it's asking for an endpoint, we do want to write this as an ordered pair. So our endpoint would be 0, 3. So we do use the midpoint formula. It's just the midpoint formula is kind of two equations in one, so we just separate this out. Okay, questions with that? All right. Our final problem I'm going to have you do is a nice, beautiful factoring problem, just to exercise your brain for these last couple of minutes. So I want you to factor 6y squared plus 22y minus 8. Remember, check for GCF first. So we'll give that a try. Once you have your answer, go and check with your shoulder partner. Or if you get stuck, you can talk to your shoulder partner. You can raise your hand. I can come around and help you out as well. But go ahead and try to back that out. And don't forget GCF. like to go and change the brackets just so I don't have so many parentheses. You don't have to, totally up to you. But that's what I like to do.
You said turn this into.
So your homework is to do that lesson homework. We just went and did some of it in class. So that's your homework. Alright, you again, let's do a homework that back there. Finish that for homework. On Blackboard, there's two information forms. Fill those out. Next class, we will learn geometry, vocabulary. If you need help finding yours, so you're going to fifth period, need help finding it, let me know. I can hopefully correct it.